I've always lived in a small town, the kind where everyone knows each other's names and where the biggest news usually revolved around the local high school football team. It was a seemingly perfect place to grow up, but as I got older, the cracks in our idyllic community began to show, and I learned that even small towns can harbor dark secrets. It all started one summer evening. I was 18, just out of high school, and the world felt like it was opening up in front of me. One night, a group of friends and I decided to drive out to a secluded spot by the woods, an old, abandoned playground that used to be a site for birthday parties and family gatherings many years ago. When we arrived, the moon was full, casting an eerie glow across the rusting swings and splintering slides. We laughed as we climbed onto one of the swings, taking turns trying to see who could swing the highest. It was all fun until one of my friends, Sarah, noticed something. Just beyond the playground, at the edge of the woods, there was a flickering light. It looked like a lantern bobbing up and down as though someone was walking. Curiosity piqued, we ventured closer. The light danced among the trees, and as we got nearer, we could hear whispers, low and indistinct. A chill crept up my spine, and I wanted to turn back, but my friends, exhilarated by the thrill of the unknown, urged me on. As we moved deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder, and I started to discern words, someone calling out for help, faint but persistent. We exchanged nervous glances, caught between the desire to investigate and the instinct to flee. Eventually, we agreed to continue, hoping maybe it was just a prank or some misguided revelers. We stumbled through the underbrush until we reached a small clearing. There, the source of the flickering light revealed itself. It was an old kerosene lamp, sitting on top of a rotting picnic table. Surrounding the table were dozens of tiny wooden figures, crudely carved to resemble people. Some were painted in dark colors, and others were left in stark wood, but all of them appeared to be in varying states of distress. Their faces were twisted in expressions that seemed alive with pain. I'll never forget the moment I realized the truth. This wasn't just a forgotten place filled with remnants of joy. It was something much darker. As we studied the scene, the whispers grew more urgent, swirling through the trees like a summer breeze that carried dread. I felt a heavy weight in my chest, and panic set in. Without speaking, we turned to leave, but it was then that we noticed something else, a figure, shrouded in darkness, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching us. It was impossible to make out any features, but I felt its eyes drilling into me. We bolted, adrenaline pumping as we retraced our steps, scrambling back through the underbrush, the whispers now a cacophony in my head. The figure didn't follow us, but it felt as though it was closing in, an unseen predator lurking just beyond our sight. Once we reached the car, we fumbled with the keys, desperate to escape. The laughter and bravado that had marked our earlier adventure were gone, replaced by a haunting silence as fear settled in. We drove home in a haze, each of us replaying the night's events, too terrified to share our thoughts. When life returned to normal, but the memory of that night lingered like a fog. Therefore, it was a crisp October afternoon when I learned the story of the old playground. A woman, it turned out, had lived in the town decades ago, a recluse known for her strange rituals and odd carvings. Townsfolk whispered about her, calling her a witch. After she vanished, no one dared enter the woods. They believed she had imbued the place with her spirit, leaving behind the figures as a warning. Many can hardly comprehend them, but they echo a familiar plea. My friends have moved away, and I often wonder if the figure still roams those woods, waiting, watching, perhaps even protecting the shadows that harbor remnants of the past. I can never return to that place. I can't help but fear that should I cross those woods again, what I left behind wouldn't let me go a second time. It was a balmy summer evening in my small hometown of Maplewood, a quiet place where everyone knew each other. A tightly knit community, Maplewood had its share of secrets, but like most residents, I never thought much of them. That is until the events of one fateful night would change everything. As a teenager, I spent many weekends hanging out with friends, drifting through the familiar streets, feeling safe in the embrace of our close-knit town. But one night, during a particularly uneventful summer, curiosity pulled my friends and me toward an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town, a place everyone warned us to avoid. The factory had been shuttered for as long as I could remember, left to rust and decay. Rumors circulated about its eerie past, tales of strange happenings and unexplained noises that sent chill through the spine. Yet, driven by youthful audacity and a sense of adventure, we decided to venture inside. That night, we would learn just how haunting the legacy of Maplewood truly was. We parked my old car outside the chain-link fence surrounding the factory, and with flashlights in hand, we climbed through a gap in the fence. The moon cast a ghostly glow over the broken windows and crumbling walls as we entered the premises, the air thick with dust and the unmistakable scent of neglect. Moving cautiously through the darkness, laughter filled the air as we played flashlight tag, darting around rusted machinery and old conveyor belts. But as we explored deeper into the building, a sense of uneasiness began to creep in, muffling our laughter and replacing it with apprehension. The deeper we went, the quieter things became. Shadows loomed in the corners, stretching and twisting with our flashlight beams. I felt a knot forming in my stomach, but I didn't want to seem cowardly in front of my friends. We pressed on, eventually finding ourselves in a dimly lit room filled with old crates. Then it happened. One of my friends, Jake, pointed toward a cracked window in the back of the room. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. We all froze, straining to listen. In the silence, we heard it, a low humming sound, almost melodic, drifting toward us from somewhere deep within the building. "What is that?" Anna, another friend, murmured, her eyes wide with fear. I stepped forward, naturally drawn to the sound, and immediately regretted it. "Let's check it out," I suggested, trying to muster some bravery, but inside, dread was bubbling up. We followed the sound, our hearts racing with each step. As we entered a narrow hallway, the humming grew louder, morphing into a low, droning voice that seemed to echo through the air. I felt goosebumps erupt on my skin, but against my better judgment, I couldn't turn back now. Just as we approached the end of the hallway, we saw a flicker of light. Holding my breath, I stepped closer to the source, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There, in the center of a large room, stood a tall figure, shrouded in shadow and illuminated by a faint glow emanating from a strange machine. The humming was deafening now, enveloping us like a thick fog. I could make out enough details to see that the figure was humanoid, but its features were obscured. It seemed to be manipulating the machine, twisting knobs and pushing buttons, all while the low, hypnotic hum continued. Fear gripped me as I gestured for my friends to retreat, but we were frozen in place, entranced by the scene before us. Suddenly, the figure turned, its gaze locking onto ours. The humming abruptly ceased, plunging the room into an unsettling silence. The air grew thick and heavy, and panic surged through me. Instinct took over as I turned to flee, adrenaline propelling my feet. My friends followed suit, racing through the darkness, the oppressive silence now punctuated by the sound of our panicked breaths. Each footstep echoed ominously in the vast emptiness of the factory, the shadows pressing in from all sides like dark clouds looming over the horizon. We fled through the narrow corridors, each twist and turn felt like a descent deeper into an abyss. The flickering light behind us created monstrous shapes on the walls, and every glance back revealed the specter of that shadowy figure, somehow both distant and omnipresent. It felt as if the very fabric of the factory was alive, twisting and shifting in a dance meant to ensnare us. We stumbled out of the main entrance, collapsing against the fence, breathing heavily in the cool night air. The factory loomed behind us, a dark silhouette against the starry sky, an unspoken promise of the horrors it housed. As we caught our breath, the feeling of being watched lingered unshakably. It was as if the haunted machinery had learned our fears and desires, embedding them into the very walls of the structure. Thereafter, I for a while longer couldn't shake the memories, the figure, the hum, the malevolent energy radiating from the dusty machinery, and most importantly, how to explain it logically by thinking it through with your friends.